The dust hung thick in the air that summer of 1887, coating everything in Cedar Ridge with a fine layer of red-brown grit. The small town sat where the wide plains met the first rise of the Rocky Mountains, a place where the wind carried both opportunity and ruin. Fortunes were made and lost on cattle drives, and the law bent to whoever had the most power. That man in Cedar Ridge was Sam Thornton. At 35, Sam owned more land than any man in 3 counties. His Double T Ranch stretched over 20,000 acres of rich grazing land, dotted with cattle that bore his brand and guarded by riders loyal to his coin. He had a house built from stone and timber hauled down from the mountains, boots ordered from San Francisco, and a reputation that made most men step aside when he walked down Main Street. Sam Thornton was used to getting what he wanted, when he wanted it. That August morning, he rode into town on his black stallion, cutting through the haze of heat and dust. Folks tipped their hats as he passed, but kept their distance. Sam liked that mixture of fear and respect. It reminded him who he was. He tied up his horse outside Murphy's General Store, but before he could step inside, a ripple of noise drifted down the street. A crowd had gathered near the stockyards. The sound was different from a cattle auction, sharper, more restless. Sam's curiosity got the better of him, and he strode over, spurs jingling against the dry boards. On a rough wooden platform stood a line of men and women, laborers desperate enough to sell their strength for food and shelter. It was common out here. The auctioneer's voice cracked through the heat, calling bids, making jokes to keep the crowd entertained. Sam was about to turn away. He had all the help he needed when he saw her. She stood at the far end of the platform, half in shadow. Tall for a woman, maybe 6 feet, with dark tangled hair that fell past her shoulders. Her clothes were little more than rags, an old man's shirt, patched leather trousers, boots held together with strips of rawhide. Yet she stood straight and silent while the others fidgeted and begged. Her eyes were fixed not on the crowd but on the mountains beyond town. "What about this one?" the auctioneer called, pointing to her with a smirk. "Mountain woman, strong as an ox, can work from dawn till dark without complaint." Laughter rolled through the crowd. Everyone in Cedar Ridge knew about the mountain folk who lived wild up in the high country. They were rumored to be half savage, half ghost, and best left alone. "She got a name?" someone shouted. "Won't say," the auctioneer answered. "Don't say much at all. But she's healthy. Start the bidding at $5. More laughter. $5 was barely the price of a mule saddle. No one spoke. The woman didn't flinch or plead. She might have been carved from stone. Sam felt something strange, twist in his chest. Curiosity, maybe, or challenge. $3 then? The auctioneer tried again. Still nothing. Sam studied her closer. Her face was roughened by sun and wind, but beneath the dirt he caught a glimpse of something fierce and unbroken. Her eyes, when they swept across the crowd, were a pale gray blue, cold as mountain ice. No fear, no shame, just waiting. An idea came to Sam then, part amusement, part arrogance. The town had been dull lately. His friends at the Cattlemen's Club loved a good story, and what better tale than this? The richest man in 3 counties bringing home a wild mountain woman as a kind of trophy. $10, Sam called out. The laughter stopped. Heads turned. The auctioneer blinked in surprise. "Mr. Thornton, sir, did I hear?" Quote, "You heard me," Sam said flatly. $10. No one dared to outbid him. Within minutes, the sale was done. The crowd stepped aside as Sam approached the platform. Up close, he could see she was younger than he first thought, maybe late 20s. Her hands were calloused, her skin weather toughened, but her back stayed straight. "Well, looks like you're coming with me," he said lightly. "Can you ride?" Her gaze lifted to his, steady and unreadable. For an instant he felt something cold slide down his spine, like she was seeing through every layer of his fine clothes and confidence. Then she nodded once. "Good," he said briskly. My horse can carry 2. The auctioneer handed him a small leather pouch. Only thing she came with, he said with a nervous laugh. Don't know what's in it. Rocks, maybe. Sam tossed it to her. She caught it one-handed and tucked it under her shirt. They rode out of town in silence, her sitting behind him on the stallion. She rode well, matching the horse's rhythm like she'd been born in a saddle. When they reached the Double T's main gate, the ranch hands had gathered, curious about their boss's new purchase. Sam swung down from his horse and turned to face them with a grin. Boys, meet our new guest. She'll be staying in the old cabin behind the barn. Make sure she's got what she needs. The men exchanged uneasy glances. Tom Rodriguez, Sam's foreman, spoke up carefully. Boss, what exactly will she be doing here? Whatever needs doing, Sam replied. Think of her as entertainment. Quote. The hands chuckled uncertainly. Not sure if he was joking. The woman stood silent, eyes cool and distant. Tom cleared his throat. What's your name, ma'am? No answer. She don't talk much, Sam said. Mountain folks are like that. Half wild. More laughter followed, louder this time, though none dared meet her eyes. Sam saw something flicker across her face. Not anger, not fear, something older. Patience, like a wolf waiting for snow. That night, Sam sat in his study sipping whiskey, telling himself it had been a good joke. The town would talk. His friends would laugh. But when he closed his eyes, he saw her standing on that platform, proud and silent, her eyes full of mountains. Outside, a wolf howled far off in the hills. And for a heartbeat, Sam could have sworn he heard another voice answering, low, human, and wild as the wind. He told himself it was only the drink, but for the first time in years, the great Sam Thornton felt something he couldn't name. And it unsettled him more than any rival or storm ever had. 2 weeks passed since the mountain woman arrived at the Double T Ranch, and in that time she had spoken no more than a dozen words. She rose before dawn, worked until well past sunset, and disappeared into the small cabin behind the barn as soon as darkness fell. She ate alone, slept alone, and kept to herself. At first, the ranch hands had laughed and joked about her, about the boss's wild woman who wouldn't speak or smile. But the laughter didn't last long. One by one, they began to notice things. The way she could carry a water barrel by herself that normally took 2 men. How she worked in the blistering heat without slowing. How the horses calmed when she was near. Even the mean-tempered mare that had bitten a man's hand last month grew gentle under her touch. She's unnatural, that one, Tom Rodriguez muttered one morning as he joined Sam at the window of the main house. They watched her from a distance, her long, dark hair whipping in the wind as she mended a fence. Yesterday, I saw her lift a post like it was nothing. The boys say she don't sleep either. Miguel swears he saw her outside at 3 in the morning, sitting and staring toward the mountains. Sam said nothing, sipping his coffee. Men should mind their own business. Tom frowned. Boss, I ain't superstitious, but folks are talking. They say she's not natural. That she brings bad luck. She's flesh and blood like the rest of us, Sam said sharply. But deep down, even he had noticed her strange habits. How she moved through the ranch at night like she was listening for something in the wind. That evening, Sam rode into town to join his usual gathering at the Brass Lantern Saloon. The laughter was loud, the whiskey strong, and the talk crude as always. But tonight the jokes had a different edge. Well, if it ain't the man who bought himself a mountain wife, drawled Harrison Pike, owner of the Lazy H Ranch. The men laughed, slapping each other's backs. Sam forced a smile. She works harder than any man I've hired. Earns her keep. That all she does? Pike grinned, and the laughter grew louder. She don't look like much from what my wife saw, another man said. Wild hair, rags for clothes, scared half the decent women in town. Sam's jaw tightened. He'd expected the teasing, but hearing them mock her stirred something in him. Something he didn't understand. She's different, that's all, he said quietly. Knows more about weather and animals than most of you put together. The men jeered, calling her savage, untamed, unfit for civilized company. Sam drained his glass and left without another word. He told himself he didn't care what they thought, but their laughter followed him all the way home. When he reached the ranch, the night was still. A faint light flickered through the window of the old cabin. He should have gone to bed, but something made him walk toward it. Through the dusty glass, he saw her sitting on the floor, cross-legged before a small circle of stones. A tiny fire burned between them, its glow soft and steady. In her lap lay a torn shirt. His shirt, he realized. The one he'd ripped on barbed wire last week and tossed aside. She was sewing it, her rough fingers moving with surprising gentleness. She was humming, too, a low, haunting tune that rose and fell like the wind between mountain peaks. The sound sent chills down Sam's spine. He leaned closer, but just as he did, she looked up. Her eyes met his through the window. Calm, unafraid, knowing. Sam stumbled back, embarrassed at being caught, but she only returned to her sewing, as if he hadn't been there at all. He walked back to the main house feeling oddly unsettled, unable to shake the image of her alone by that small fire. The next morning, trouble came to the ranch. 3 of Sam's best cattle were found dead near the east pasture, torn apart like by wolves. "Wolves don't come this close to town," Tom muttered, crouching to study the tracks. "And these prints, they're huge." Sam dismounted, kneeling beside him. "Could be a big pack. Or something worse," Tom replied grimly. A rustle of movement made them turn. The mountain woman was standing nearby, her face unreadable. "You know anything about this?" Sam asked. She said nothing at first, then walked forward and knelt beside the prints. She studied them silently, touching the dirt, sniffing the air. Then she looked toward the distant mountains. "Pack," she said at last, her voice low and rough from disuse. "Big, hungry, early snow coming." The men stared. It was the most she'd spoken since arriving. "Early snow?" Tom scoffed. "It's September." She pointed to the sky, then to the grass, then to the mountains, her meaning clear even without words. "Signs of change," Tom muttered. "Crazy talk." But 3 days later, the temperature dropped 20 degrees overnight. A week after that, snow fell, a full month earlier than anyone expected. The men stopped laughing after that. They started listening. Even Sam couldn't deny it anymore. She saw things no one else did. She moved through the world like it whispered secrets only she could hear. That night, Sam found her in the barn, tending to a wounded colt. "What happened?" he asked. "Wire," she said simply. Her hands were gentle as she cleaned the cut. The animal, which had fought everyone else, stood perfectly still for her. "You know about doctoring animals?" Sam asked. "Some." "Where'd you learn?" She didn't look up. "Mountains teach, if you listen." He leaned against the stall door, studying her. "And what else do they teach?" She finally raised her head, meeting his eyes. "Survival, truth, what matters?" Sam frowned. "And what matters?" She stood, wiping her hands on a rag. "Not what you think. You believe power's in land, money, making others small so you feel big." His temper flared. "You don't know what I think." "No," she said quietly, walking past him, "but the mountains do." He called after her, half angry, half curious. "And what do the mountains say about me?" She paused at the door. "They say wind breaks the mighty oak but bends around grass." Then she was gone. Sam stared after her, the words sinking deeper than he wanted to admit. That night, sleep wouldn't come. The mountain woman's voice haunted him. That quiet certainty, that strange power that didn't come from land or gold. The next morning, when the ranch hands joked about her again, Sam didn't join in. Instead, he looked toward the mountains and wondered what else the woman he'd bought for $10 might know that he didn't. Because for the first time in his life, Samuel Thornton wasn't sure he was the strongest one in Cedar Ridge anymore. The dust storm came without warning on a Tuesday afternoon, rising from the horizon like a red-brown wall that swallowed the sun. One moment the air was still and heavy. The next it roared across the plains like a living thing. "Get the stock to shelter!" Tom Rodriguez shouted over the rising wind. Men ran in all directions, driving horses and cattle toward the barns as the storm turned day to dusk. Sam pulled a bandana over his face, his hat yanked low, but the dust still burned his eyes. He'd seen storms before, but nothing like this. The wind screamed, tearing shingles from roofs and slamming gates open. He managed to get the last of the yearlings into the barn when he remembered the pregnant mares in the far pasture. Cursing under his breath, he started toward them. But visibility dropped to almost nothing. The world was a blur of dust and noise. Then, through the swirling haze, he saw her. The mountain woman moved through the storm like she belonged to it. Her hair whipped wildly around her face, but she didn't stumble or shield her eyes. She'd wrapped herself in a horse blanket, the fabric tied across her shoulders, and her eyes gleamed pale through the dust. "Come," she shouted, grabbing his arm and pulling him toward the tool shed. "The mares," he started, choking on grit. "Safe," she said firmly, handing him a rag soaked in water. "Breathe through this. I moved them an hour ago." Sam blinked at her in disbelief. "How could you know the storm was coming?" "The birds flew east this morning. Horses were restless. Air tasted like copper." She was already gathering rope and blankets, her movements calm, practiced. "Storm not done," she said. "Worse coming." Before Sam could reply, she pushed open the door and vanished into the chaos again. He followed, half blind, trusting her instinct more than his own. They found Miguel and two other hands huddled behind an overturned wagon, coughing and terrified. "This way!" she called. For once, no one questioned her authority. She led them to the main barn, using the storm itself like a guide. Inside, men and animals fought panic. "Where's Tom?" Sam demanded. "Went after that new bull you bought," someone yelled back. Sam cursed. That bull had cost a fortune, but no price was worth a man's life. He started for the door, but the mountain woman stepped in front of him. "I'll go," she said. "The hell you will," Sam shot back. "That's my foreman out there. And you're blind in this," she said simply. "I know how to move in storms. You don't." Before he could argue, she was gone, swallowed by the swirling dust. The next hour stretched like eternity. The barn shook under the wind's fury. The men sealed gaps with wet blankets, rationed water, and calmed the terrified horses. Through it all, Sam paced like a caged lion, torn between fear and admiration. Then the door burst open. Tom stumbled in, half collapsing, the mountain woman holding him up. Blood streaked her hands where the rope had burned her skin. "Got him," she said breathlessly. "Bull's dead. Tom's not." When the storm finally passed, the Double T stood battered but alive. They had lost one barn and a few cattle, but every man had survived. "Thanks to her." Tom's voice trembled when he spoke later. "Boss, she saved my life. I was done for out there." She cut the rope and near lost her hands doing it. Sam looked at her then, really looked, at the soot on her face, the burns on her palms, the exhaustion in her eyes. "You saved us all," he said quietly. "It's what people do." She answered simply, "When storms come, people help each other or die alone." Her words cut deep. Over the next few days, things changed at the ranch. The men who'd once mocked her now asked her advice. They called her Miss Grace, after Sam overheard her finally whisper her name one night while soothing a frightened colt. Grace Fletcher. Sam repeated it to himself more than once. Then came the Cedar Ridge Harvest Fair, the biggest event of the season. Against his better judgment, Sam asked Grace to come. She hesitated, then agreed. When they arrived, heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Harrison Pike's wife, Eleanor, spotted them and smiled like a cat. "Why, Mr. Thornton?" she called sweetly. "How unusual to see you with your mountain friend. What should we call her? Employee? Pet?" Grace's jaw tightened, but she stayed silent. Sam opened his mouth to reply, but Eleanor kept going. "Do you even know her name? Or does one name all their livestock?" The crowd tittered. For a moment, Sam felt the old pride rise, the instinct to laugh it off. But before he could speak, Grace stepped forward. "He paid $10 for me," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the fairgrounds. The laughter died. Brought me here as a joke. Bought me like property. But tell me, good people of Cedar Ridge, who here is the savage? The one bought or the one who buys? You could have heard a pin drop. I have a name, she continued, her gaze sweeping the crowd. Grace Fletcher. My family lived in these mountains before any of you built your fine houses. Men like him, she glanced at Sam. Took our land, burned our homes, called it progress. You call us wild. But what are you when you can buy a person for $10 and call it sport? The silence that followed was heavy and raw. Even Eleanor Pike paled, her smug smile crumbling. Then Grace turned and walked away, her head high, her dignity blazing brighter than the noon sun. Sam stood frozen, shame and pride warring in his chest. He caught Eleanor's sneer, and something inside him snapped. Enough, he said coldly. You think her words are savage? She saved more lives than any of you ever will. She's got more honor in her than the whole damn lot of Cedar Ridge combined. He left the fairground to gasps and whispers, finding Grace where she stood under a cottonwood tree, staring at the mountains. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for buying me, for making me your joke. For all of it, he said honestly, for not even asking your name. She looked at him, those pale eyes cutting through his defenses. You could have hired me. I was desperate enough. You didn't have to own me. He nodded slowly. You're right. I didn't, but I do now, because I've come to respect you more than I ever respected myself. Grace studied him for a long moment, then sighed. Respect doesn't erase what you did. Nothing can. No, he said, but maybe it can start to make things right. 2 weeks later, he brought her a paper, signed, stamped, sealed, her freedom. No man owns you now, he said. Stay if you want. Go if you choose. The choice is yours. Grace held the paper, her hands trembling. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then, softly, if I'm free to go, why do I want to stay? Quote, because this ranch needs you, he said, and because maybe I do too. Her eyes searched his, calm and sure. Freedom means I choose my path, and today, she paused, a faint smile ghosting her lips. Today, I choose to stay. Quote, that evening, as the sun sank behind the mountains, a lone wolf howled in the distance. Grace tilted her head, listening, then whispered something too soft for Sam to hear. He asked, what did you say? She looked toward the mountains, her eyes glowing in the firelight. I said thank you. To the storm, to the mountains, to whatever sent me here. Because sometimes even a cruel joke can lead you where you were meant to be. And standing there in the fading light, Sam Thornton, once the proudest man in 3 counties, finally understood that the woman he'd bought for $10 had given him something worth far more. A soul, and a heart he didn't know he'd lost until she handed it back to him.